welcome to the Deadhead Cannabis Show, everybody. We're recording live from Las Vegas at the MJBizCon, although this will probably go out a few days after it's recorded. But we're having a good time here in Las Vegas, having some very good dinners, a lot of good contacts. There's in excess of 30,000 people, maybe 1,000 or more exhibitors with booths. It's just an amazingly huge event. It's a full mile and a half walk from the hotel over to the convention center, even though they're connected by a hallway. And just absolutely fascinating, the different cannabis businesses you see, extraction machines and things that grind up biomass. And we're lucky enough to have here with us today Elliott Rolfe and Chris Lane. Elliott's an attorney, and Chris Lane is a head of business development for a very prestigious law firm in the UK. And they're here to talk to us about what's going on, not just in the UK, but in other parts of the British Empire where they've been traveling extensively, looking at marijuana and giving legal and business advice all around the world. I'll start with Elliott here. Elliott can say hi to our crew.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Yeah, tell us about what's going on at Mackrell.
It's very, very busy at the moment. So we opened the cannabis law department about a year and a half ago. And in that time, we've just got busier and busier and busier. I think we're actually the first and only dedicated cannabis law department in the country still to this date. And because we do that every day, it's our bread and butter. We don't do anything else. It's allowed us to get very close to all of the issues in the industry. It's still coming thick and fast.
Where is the UK's cannabis program?
We're some considerable way behind the US. Essentially, the concentration, the focus commercially at the moment is in the health and wellness sector with CBD products, anything that's lower than 0.2% THC. There's been a significant upturn probably over the past 12 months into things like the drinks industry, the cosmetics industry. So it's pretty far reaching. We've also, of course, got the pharmaceutical side, and we'll probably come on to a little bit later as to the challenges and technicalities of why that's not as accessible as it is. But it's safe to say we've come a very long way in a very short period of time. As Elliott says, we're 2 years down the track with the department. We've had to expand considerably just to keep up the demand from our client base, and it's a client base that's truly international.
And is there cultivation?
There is cultivation. There are essentially two different strands. You've got hemp, which has barely any THC in it, right. And this is where the 0.2% figure comes. And then you've got your full fat THC. To cultivate hemp, it is difficult to get a license. To cultivate the full-blown marijuana, it's almost impossible in the UK at the moment. We're hitting a lot of hurdles with Home Office licensing. They're very nervous to actually give these licenses out, but we're getting there slowly, and we're seeing. So
there's still a significant black market then for THC cannabis.
Absolutely, and arguably that's really the only place you can get it. I mean, we do actually have an exemption almost in law now for medicinal use. The problem is, of the thousands and thousands of patients that need prescriptions, only a handful, I think it's a little over 100 now, have actually been given those prescriptions because of the difficulties in the law.
I was really surprised at that number we were talking about the other evening. In the population of the UK, including Scotland and Northern Ireland, is 65 million.
That's right about that.
And only 100 medical marijuana licenses for 65 million. So that's crazy.
It's very frightening, actually, and ultimately it comes down to the fact that you have to be on a list of specialist doctors in order to prescribe, but not just one list. You have to be a specialist for that particular ailment. So every patient is waiting for one doctor, potentially, or a handful, and there just aren't enough to go around.
Amazing. And Chris, from a business point of view, business development point of view, what are the types of things that make a good client for your firm?
I've always said, legal services, full stop, it shouldn't be a service that you engage with to fix a problem that you already have. And we found in this industry, because, in the main it's still unregulated in the UK, but there's a lot of people that are jumping in for a quick buck. Very little repercussions if it goes wrong from a consumer perspective. It's outright dangerous in some examples. So our ideal clients are people that are prepared to engage at the earliest stage. They're the people that are willing to invest time, effort, money in ensuring that from a regulatory perspective they're as compliant as they can be, but they also future-proof the business. we're very comprehensive. It is a full service firm, so we may have people that come to us with a specific brief and a specific request, but part of my role is to ensure that the cross-sell capacity of not just our firm in London, but our international network now in 65 countries can help that business grow. So in a nutshell, the people that we want are people that are serious about growing a credible reputation in the industry.
And I believe you told me that you had recently made a trip to South Africa?
I did, and that was as weird and wonderful as all the other conferences around the world. Obviously, everyone's extremely keen and very excited in South Africa, where they've recently had decriminalisation for personal use, and it's very prevalent over there. Everyone's very familiar with the plant. They're getting more comfortable with it. Public perception is getting better, and you see that reflected in the businesses. You've got a huge innovation, very much the same as we saw today at the expo. So
in South Africa, they have legal cultivation and legal consumption?
It's tricky. This consumption is, as I say, decriminalised. It's not officially legal. And
okay, so there's no dispensaries?
Not that I've seen, no. Not in South Africa just yet. But, let's say, there are strands of business that are kicking off my flight to the UK.
Do people come up and offer you marijuana when you're walking down the street? Taxi cab drivers, like they do here in the States?
I certainly did get offered while I was sitting on the beach if I wanted anything. And actually, they were very relaxed about it because it's tolerated. But in terms of the official legal position there, no, we don't have that sort of model in terms of dispensaries.
Well, my partner, Larry Mishkin, his firm does some international work. They have an office in Poland, I believe, right, Larry?
Well, actually, yes, Jim, we do. We have offices throughout Eastern Europe. We do have one in Poland. We have an office in the Ukraine. We do have an office now in South Africa. We have offices in South America. And Bob Homan has really kind of made it a mission of his to expand the scope of the firm's hemp practice internationally. He's done a very, very good job. Both through the firm and through the sister company IHS International Hemp Solutions, which last year I believe was the largest importer of certified hemp seeds into the country. And so they've been very, very involved with all of this as well. I know Bob was in South Africa recently, and this past April, both he and I were in Tel Aviv for the Canna conference there, which drew an international crowd, and I found to be a very, very impressive and very interesting type of event. You know, the structure of it seems familiar to those of us who have gone to conferences in the United States, but it's really something when sitting down to have lunch, and instead of somebody from Arkansas and Montana, you're talking to somebody from Qatar and France or wherever else they're coming from. The lesson that I learned from that is that the cannabis phenomenon is not unique to the United States, that it's a worldwide phenomenon now. And that really raises a question I wanted to ask you guys, because this is something I don't know a whole lot about. What is the history of cannabis in the United Kingdom? Right, in the United States, we know it's had a very, very checkered history where early part of last century it was put in the Tax Act, and then President Nixon created the Controlled Substances Act, and they list marijuana right at the very top, right along with heroin and LSD. And the biggest problem that we've been running into here, I think, is helping to demystify cannabis. In Illinois right now, we have adult use, and local communities have the right to opt out. So I've got clients who want to locate in some of these communities. We have to go convince the communities that it's okay to do. And the people who get up, the local citizens who get up to object, are making arguments that are right out of reefer madness. And that's just a product of, the United States government and the war on drugs and the type of messages that they've sent. Is there a similar type of relationship in Great Britain where there's a lot of pressure from the government?
I mean, historically, marijuana has been illegal. There have been periods in the past where it wasn't. The problem is a lot of the country have a very traditional view, and our tabloids don't help. So you've got a lot of people who would not be impressed with the government if they did just outright legalise. And I think the government are waiting for the right time and for public perception to turn. It is a battle constantly. We know that successive governments have demonised marijuana in the UK, and actually, even in light of evidence that marijuana was less harmful than previously thought, they increased the penalties the last slot, moving it from our Class C up to a Class B substance. So yeah, it's kind of madness, if you like, in that way. And now only slowly is it coming down because its therapeutic benefits are being recognised.
And to help us here in the United States understand your rules, what is the difference between Class B and Class C?
Oh, absolutely. So let's start with Class A. This is the most restrictive class, if you like. The class system is essentially aligning with penalties. So the Class A drugs are those that are considered worst and have the most severe penalties for possession or supply. Class B are less so in Class C, and it goes on and so forth.
So, for example, a couple of examples of Class B and Class C.
At the moment, in Class B, we've got cannabis. I think ketamine is probably a Class B substance at the moment.
Cocaine would be...
Cocaine is Class A. Ecstasy is currently Class A.
LSD?
LSD is a Class A.
Uh-huh.
So, they move them around, and things like diazepam, Valium, the things that you might get prescribed, they are usually found also around sort of Class C. But they do, if they get a bit of pressure from the press or for some other reason, they'll jump up and they'll determine that stiffer penalties are required.
Uh-huh.
So to see cannabis go from a Class C up to a Class B is absurd, in this day and age.
And your first contact with the authorities usually starts with the police for simple possession. Do people go to jail in the UK for possession of marijuana?
I would like to think that hasn't happened for a long time. The police are using their discretion very well in a lot of places. Some police forces, parts of the police, have come out and said it's just not in the public interest for them to be putting people away for cannabis possession. But it happens, and you do see young lives getting ruined in certain circumstances.
And Chris, as we come to the end of this segment, what comments would you like to make to a U.S. audience? Some of your takeaways from your travels to the United States and cannabis?
Yeah, our approach to here, and to take it a step back, the way in which we started our journey in the UK was actually to engage with one of the original founders of an international network of lawyers called Mackrell International. And we were lucky enough to be invited over to the US about a year ago now, actually. And we were taken through our US partner firms to a number of grow facilities and dispensaries here in Nevada and also in Colorado. And we were so hugely impressed by it that what we wanted to do is go back to the UK and essentially get ahead of the curve, hence us setting up the first ever department. So we were poised and ready for an industry that was only just starting to wake up in the UK. Roll the clock forward 2 years to where we are now, and I've had very credible discussions this week at MJBizCon about inward investment by major US corporations to the UK market, which is a very exciting prospect for us, but they're as excited, it seems, on the regulatory awareness and the level of guidance and how comprehensive it is, that ultimately, if a US firm wants to set up in the UK, we're the people that can help you do that.
It does seem to be a global phenomenon. Here at the Las Vegas convention, there are people here from all over the world. A gentleman from Switzerland has a company here in Las Vegas, and his background is in the pharmaceutical industry, and he's running a very large cultivation and production business here in Las Vegas. And he moved here from Switzerland to run this company here in Las Vegas. So, yeah, the global footprint is all over this. Well, thanks again, guys.
We forgot to ask him the most important question of all, whether or not you guys have any familiarity with the Grateful Dead. Do you have any experiences ever having seen them or listening to them? I know that they've played in England. They used to play in England along with the rest of the continent when they go do their European tours. So have you ever seen them?
I think actually I haven't. I'm looking forward to listening to them. I've heard a lot about them, but I've not actually had first exposure. I'm imagining Chris might have.
We like to mix in musical stories with this show, and there's a story of one of your countrymen, Elvis Costello.
Yeah? Oh, yeah.
You guys fans of Elvis Costello? Sure. As a young man, I guess he was in high school in 1972, he attended one of the Grateful Dead concerts. It was an outdoor concert. I believe it was May of 72. It was Grateful Dead's first year, well, maybe not the first tour, but their European tour of 72. And somewhere there's a picture where Elvis Costello has a picture of the crowd and the stage, and he circled. He said, "That's me," written on the thing. He was heavily influenced by the Grateful Dead, and he's had a long and prosperous career as a musician. Larry, I have not been doing a lot musically. I'm looking forward to seeing 2 Dead and Company shows with John Mayer at the end of this month. But you've been kind of active musically. What's going on with you as far as seeing some shows?
I want to take a quick break to thank you for listening to today's show. As the leading cannabis podcast network, we're constantly adding new cannabis podcasts to support our industry's growth. And that's why we're so excited to announce our newest podcast, The Cannabis Breakout. The show is about the thousands of Americans who remain in prison for violating cannabis laws that have long since been overturned. The Cannabis Breakout gives cannabis political prisoners a voice. If you're a former cannabis prisoner or have a loved one who is a cannabis prisoner, we want to share your story. Please go to MJBulls.com and sign up to be a guest.
Sure. Well, on the last show, I mentioned my recent trip out to San Francisco to celebrate with a good buddy of mine out there, the 20th anniversary of the founding of his company, and that was on Thursday night. And because you can never go to San Francisco without seeing a lot of great music, on Saturday night, the whole group of us that were out there all got tickets, and we went over to the Fillmore, and we saw the Allman Betts Revival Band. Now, this is a band made up of Devin Allman, who's Greg's son, Dwayne Betts, who's Dickie Betts' son, and Barry Oakley Jr., who, as you can imagine, is Barry Oakley's son. And they've got other musicians with them, and they come out and they do very, very, very respectable versions of most of the Allman Brothers music. Really played it well, but it was really a lot of fun because they had a number of special guests who came out and played with them. One of them was Luther Dickinson from the North Mississippi All-Stars, which is one of my favorite bands, and Luther was out there for a while, and he did an amazing job. They brought Robert Randolph out on stage, and he played the pedal steel guitar for a little while and did an amazing job with that. And then, just as kind of a nod, I guess, to irony, in the 1970s, they trotted out this guy who looked very, very familiar, but I couldn't quite place his face until they announced him, and it was Robin Zander, the lead singer for Cheap Trick. And then they launched into a couple of Cheap Trick songs, which took me back to my high school days. It was really, really an amazing thing. First of all, here's live Allman and Betts Blood up on the stage. These are the real deal. These are the guys. They got a lot of great stories, as you can imagine. The music is really a lot of fun. They're taking this show on the road, and I would highly recommend it to anybody who would like to see it. It's just a fun night of music. There's something very, very special about seeing a musical show, any musical show, in the Fillmore Auditorium. That may have been ground zero for Grateful Dead, and some of their greatest music came out of the Fillmore Auditorium. And when you're in there, the pictures that are all over the wall and the posters are an event in and of themselves. You could spend hours just walking along and looking at everything. And they've got huge pictures of Jerry as the kind of the centerpiece to everything that's going on. And the joke I have with my friends is, there were so many great things that happened in that building. You can probably lick the walls and start tripping. But it's quite a place. And I was a little bit skeptical, to go see the kids of the band, but much like Phil Lesch's sons have joined him in the Terrapin Crossroads band and done a marvelous job. These guys came out and they really killed it. I couldn't have been more impressed. It was just tremendous live music, a lot of good jams in there. That's another band that I highly recommend besides Carl Denson. If you have an opportunity to see the Allman Betts Revival, it's a show worth checking out.
That sounds great. What were some of the songs?
Oh, anything you want. They played Elizabeth Reed. They played Jessica. They played Southbound. They played One Way Out. The only song that we kept waiting for all night that they didn't play was Whipping Post. But I can't give them too much grief about that because they played so many other just great Allman tunes and other good traditional rock tunes, and just to see all the talent that was out there with him. Luther Dickinson, I think, is one of the great guitar players around. He's just got a tremendous amount of energy, and he was bouncing around and having a good time. Robert Randolph really took over the stage for a while with his pedal steel that he does. It's just at one point they actually brought out 3 guitar players, 2 guys and a girl, and I say girl because none of them could have been older than 14 or 15 years old, maybe. Allman made a big point of saying, here's the next generation, and these kids came out, and Jim, I got to tell you, they played guitar like you and I could only dream of ever playing a guitar. And they had stage presence. They were jamming away. They each took turns stepping out in front, and it was just incredible to see these little people making this huge, amazing guitar sound. It was very, very cool.
Were they kids of the band members?
I don't think that they were directly related to the band members. We never were quite sure about that, but somehow they have a connection one way or another because they're known to the band, and my sense is this is not the first time they've done it. It was a little too polished. Really, just to see this probably 15 or 16-year-old girl standing there and shredding an electric guitar, like, just unbelievable. She was that good. It was really, really great. The other 2 guys were really good, and what I really liked about them is when they were doing their jams, they have it all down. Even the facial contortions and the shrugs and the this, and boy, they were just cranking out music that was a pleasure to hear.
Well, and one musical note here from Las Vegas, I heard on the radio today that Foreigner is going to do a 2-week residency here in January.
Yes, there's been a lot of bands. Aerosmith just did one out there last year. And other bands have been doing that. That's the big thing. If you were a 70s big hair band, you can now go do a residency in Las Vegas.
Yeah. Boy, and they pack them in here in Las Vegas, so it's good for these aging rock stars to be able to have a place to play their music. And what a legacy to have the second generation of the Allman Brothers. The last time I saw the Allman Brothers was at Jazz Fest shortly before Greg passed away with Warren Haynes on lead. That was my great memory, final memory of the Allman Brothers playing at Jazz Fest.
Warren, they had Warren and Derek Trucks playing guitar for them their last couple of years.
Yeah.
I saw a few of the final run at the Beacon Theater. My brother, who lives out there, was able to get some tickets, and I went out there with him to see a show or two. Look, we can all agree that without Duane Allman, it's just not the same. But I would suggest that there's very few people alive other than Derek Trucks who are truly capable of channeling Duane Allman the way that he does. And, of course, with Warren and his voice and his singing and, really kind of taking over a lot of that, it was a different Allman look, kind of like saying, I'm going to see John Mayer play lead guitar for Dead & Company. Great show, great musicians, maybe not quite the same as the original guys, but good enough that nobody's complaining.
Well, listen, we're coming to the end of our time slot, so I'll plant a couple of seeds for our next show. We didn't get a chance to talk about Missouri. The next time we have the show, we might actually know who some of the license award winners are in Missouri. Michigan went adult use last week with still no adult use dispensaries available in Michigan.
Before we go, though, I just want to tease one thing for our listeners. We're going to arrange sometime in the next couple of weeks to have a very, very special guest on our show, and that guest is a gentleman named Jay Blakesberg. Jay lives out in the San Francisco area, and he's the official photographer for The Dead, for Fish, for any one of a number of rock and roll bands. And again, my good friend Andy Greenberg from Society Jane, who was on our show a few weeks ago, she's very friendly with him. He lives right around the corner from her. And when I was out there, I had an opportunity to go by and meet him, see his studio, and I'll save the stories for the next show. But it really was like a Deadhead's dream, what they've got going on in there, and the music and the everything. And Jay was kind enough to indicate that he would be more than happy to come on our show and be a guest. So for our listeners, stay tuned for that, because we're going to get Jay in and learn about the inside workings of the Grateful Dead.
Well, that's a great tease for the next show. Larry, thanks again. So Jim Marty here saying over and out until next time.
Larry Mishkin from Hoban Law Group saying goodbye. Jim and everybody, have fun in Las Vegas.